I was hoping to be right around the 400 mark. And by the time I did the final count, I think I had like 412 locks, which is perfect for me. Why is 400 important? Well, if you want the micro lock look, you do need your locks to be a certain size. They do need to be a certain size so that you have that like very full, and especially as they grow out, kind of like that long flowing, very light look. If you make the locks larger, they will still be very full and beautiful, but they won't have that light, airy appearance. They won't have that small and skinny, slender appearance because the sizing is off.
Hey everybody, it's Busy Mark and I am back with another video, but before we begin, I am pleased to announce that The Modest Fitting has officially launched a women's clothing boutique offering skirts and dresses that embody modesty, femininity, and beauty. To learn more about dresses like this one and others available for purchase, head over to themodestfitting.com. But without further ado, let's begin.
I am back to do a 1-year update on my Microlocs that I started with braids. And I just kind of want to give an overview of what my experience has been like. And I wanted to start with really my decision to start my locks with braids. In the lock community, it's kind of understood that interlocks will transition to locks the fastest. Twists will also get you there, probably not as quickly as the interlocks will, but the slowest process of them all is braids. At least that's what's popularly understood. So it is a little interesting to deliberately choose to start locks with braids. But at the time that I decided to put the braids in, I wasn't actually certain that I was going to be, in fact, starting another lock journey. I just knew that I needed to be doing something different with my hair other than the washing goes every 3 to 4 days, because it was just putting my hair through too much. I don't want to say I was sustaining mechanical damage, but I did know that I was risking mechanical damage with all of that combing and pulling and all of that stuff. So I knew I needed to do something. So I decided to put braids in, but in the event I wanted them to become a set of locks, I took time to deliberately and very precisely do the parting to give me a really nice set of Microlocs. Something just a note on the braid pattern. I am 1 year in and the braid pattern is completely gone. I will be including some close-ups so that you can see for yourself, but there is no discernible braid pattern left in my hair except the portions that I saw were beginning to bunch. So I combed those portions out and then I put new braids in. So if you see braids, they are new ones, but the ones that I originally put in a year ago on April 1st, those braids are completely gone. And I wanted to kind of talk through that. Something that I've noticed is that braids, when you are trying to lock your hair or not lock your hair, really depends on the hair type and not the braids themselves. So in the hair classification system, I fall pretty squarely at a 4A hair type. And what I've noticed is that if you move more towards the 4C family, so you have maybe not, you may not have ringlet curls, but you have maybe a zigzag pattern, or there isn't a discernible pattern. It's just like really healthy, cottony afro hair. The 4C and beyond family tends to not transition to locks in braids. So what I mean is, let's say you were someone who wanted to maintain your hair long term in braids, but you didn't want them to turn to locks. If you have that 4C and beyond hair type, braids will do very well for you because they don't tend to transition into locks with that much ease. And I will include some clips of some other content creators on here who are maintaining their hair long term with braids that they don't take down, and even months and months in, even like 6 months in, the braid pattern has not budged. It doesn't budge. Whereas what I've noticed is if you have a very strong curl pattern, so 4A, something along there, it will transition into locks even through the braids. But the reason why is because, at least with my experience, because my ringlet curl pattern is so strong, it fights against whatever kind of plait I'm putting in my hair, whether that's interlocks, whether that's two-strand twist, or it's braids, my curls always unravel against that pattern. And it's in the unraveling that little pockets of space are created, which then allows shed hair to be able to move and settle into those empty spaces, thereby supporting the process of changing from braids to locks. So I just more information. When I was a loose natural, like way before I ever even considered putting locks in, my hair fights against that braid, two-strand twist, interlock pattern so much that even as a loose natural, wearing my hair in two-strand twists, which was really popular for a lot of us when we were first starting, that never worked for me because my hair would just unravel. The one thing that my hair took to very well were coils, because the coils supported just my hair's natural spiral and coil design, such that it went really nicely. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you're someone who wants to start your locks with braids, I know that it's popularly discussed that braids don't transition to locks and that you keep the braid pattern until the end of time. That is true for certain hair types and not true for other hair types. So that's just something to think about. So how about my progress? So with me, anytime, so y'all are just going to hear the birds in the background. They're really active right now. It's kind of early in the morning and they're ready to go. So just bear with me. But as far as my progress, my pattern of transformation always follows that my hair tends to get thicker before it gets longer. And so a year in, which is where I'm at now, the thickening process has certainly begun. It's still not complete yet, and it probably won't be complete until I'm about 18 months, maybe 2 years in. And so I'll keep monitoring that. But you won't see, and I typically don't see, drastic changes in length until that thickening process has completed. And so I'll put some pictures so you can see how thin my braids were when we started and how they've thickened up now, and they have yet some more thickening to go. But I did start my braids, I think my hair was just a little past my ears, and now the back of my hair is settling somewhere around the base of my neck. So I have had some growth and I'm really happy with it so far. My maintenance routine, as far as retightening goes, I still haven't picked a definitive number because I'm tinkering around to see what I can do. For the past couple of months, I've been retightening my hair every 10 weeks, and that actually works really fine for me. The only issue is that the really small locks along the perimeter of my hair need a little bit more reinforcement more frequently than just 10 weeks. So I'm trying to figure out, am I going to just do my whole head in 10 weeks and then maybe halfway around the 5-week mark, check on the smaller locks, maybe do some interlocking if need be, or am I just going to shift everything to just 8 weeks? I haven't decided, but ideally, I'd like to stick to longer periods between retightening just because I'd like to be leaving my scalp alone as much as I possibly can without neglecting the reinforcement of my roots that creates a beautiful lock along the length as it grows out. So that's just something to think about. I do want to advise that don't hear me say that I'm interlocking every 10 weeks and believe that that's something that you need to take on, because the frequency with which you retighten your roots should depend first and foremost on the growth cycle of your hair. When I was doing locks, I had a client come to me who she was a big fan of Tunisia Ali here on YouTube. And if I can remember, I think Tunisia retightens her sister locks every 12 weeks. And she has a beautiful set of really long locks. With the lady that was coming to me, she wanted to do 12 weeks because Tunisia was doing 12 weeks. I told her I didn't think it was a good idea, but that we could try it out. And she did. She waited 12 weeks. And by the time she got to me, she lost quite a few locks. And the reason for that is because Your hair growth cycle will determine, at least in part, how frequently you need to be reinforcing the roots. All of our scalps shed hair at different rates of speed. Some of us have really long growth cycles, meaning the hair strands will get really long before the scalp decides it's time to release it. Some of us have hair strands that won't get as long, but the scalp will still decide it's time for this strand to be shed. So that's the difference. Like, I'm using fake numbers, so don't, it's just for explaining. If you have a growth cycle of 16 weeks, you're going to keep that hair strand for 16 weeks. You're going to keep that hair strand for 16 weeks, and then at the end of the 16 weeks, it will shed. Someone else might have a growth cycle of 8 weeks where they grow a hair strand for 8 weeks and then the scalp sheds it at 8 weeks. The one who has the shorter hair growth cycle will need to have their roots reinforced a little bit more frequently than the one whose growth cycle is longer. So to go back to the client that I was working with, by the time she came to me, she only had like a couple of strands supporting some of the locks. It wasn't like that across the entire head, but there are some portions where a full thick lock was being supported by just a few hair strands because they had been released. The other hair strands that were supporting had been shed from the scalp. So you need to reintegrate those newly formed hair strands that are emerging from the scalp into the lock so that it continues to have some sort of consistency in the roots that are supporting that one lock that's attached to that section of the scalp. I hope that makes sense and that it's not confusing, but I'm explaining that so that you don't hear me say that I retighten my locks every 10 weeks and then you're like, well, if 10 weeks works for her, it'll work for me. It depends on the growth cycle. I don't think that anyone needs to be retightening more frequently than 6 weeks. Most of us will probably do okay with 8 weeks. But when we're getting beyond the 8 weeks, you really need to just be paying attention to what's going on with your roots and make sure that with the stretching of retightening weeks in between, you're not jeopardizing, locks getting thin at the root. The products that I'm using as far as my maintenance, I try to keep my systems as simple as possible. Historically, before I started having itchy scalp problems, I would use only 2 things. I would wash my hair with Dr. Bronner's once a month, and I would thoroughly oil my scalp and the length of my hair, and that was all I did. Now that I've gotten older, I do deal with itchy scalp, and so that means washing my hair more frequently. I try not to wash my hair more frequently than once a week, but sometimes I might need to. But generally speaking, I'm using Head and Shoulders. I'm following it up with diluted conditioner. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Then after that, I will drench my hair in a tea rinse, let that sit for a little bit, and then I'll rinse that away with water. And then once I'm out, I will apply oil to my scalp. It's an oil blend that I mix together that's really to help to, or I should say it's designed to help with combating thinning and encouraging hair growth. So I will apply that all over my scalp. And then I will put some between my hands and rub it along the length of my hair too. I have heard as of late that, I don't know how much of this is really in the lock community, but apparently there was a no oils and butters movement not that long ago where everyone with natural hair wasn't using oils and butters in their hair. I wasn't aware of that because I haven't consumed natural hair content in so long that I've been out of the loop. But I've also noticed that there are some people in the lock community who feel as though oil does not belong in locks. And for the life of me, I can't understand that. I mean, when I think about things, I see that our scalps produce sebum. And generally speaking, that sebum is highly nutritious, both to the scalp, but also the length of the hair. Every time, listen, if we didn't have locks, every time you're brushing your hair, you're distributing that oil from your scalp to the length of your hair to nourish it. So why would we then wash our hair with these soaps that remove everything, but then not replenish the oil we're removing? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's not a train that I'm getting on. I will continue, as I have always done, to put oil in my scalp and also along the length of my locks. And I don't know why we're abstaining from oils, but that's apparently something that we're doing. Now, with the conditioner, I only started applying conditioner to my hair when I was about 10 months in. And the reason for that is because now with the more frequent washing, my hair is dry in a way that it has historically not been. But now washing every week and following up with only oil, I have found that my hair is a little bit more dry than it typically is. And that just kind of wasn't sitting well with me. I was like, I don't think my hair should be this dry. So I then, at about 10 months, when my hair had an opportunity to settle, started using diluted conditioner. So I would get an applicator bottle, put maybe 5 to 6 pumps of conditioner, and then fill the rest of it with hot water to dissolve the conditioner into a very watery solution, and I would apply that to my hair after I had washed it. Even with the dilution, it still did cause some, I don't want to call it slippage, but it would just cause the length of the locks in some of the areas to kind of bulge. It was like the beginning stages of bunching. So after every wash, I would go through my locks one by one and do any repairs that I saw needed to be addressed. That takes time to do. Some people may not be up for that, but it was something that I was willing to do. One, because I wanted my hair to not be dry. It needed moisture. And I also didn't want my locks continuing to mature in a way that was misshapen. So I did take the time to fix all of those things. I have not been braiding and banding. I'm sure that braiding and banding would be helpful, but there's something in my mind where I just don't feel like I can thoroughly wash and completely rinse my hair if it's braided and banded. I just feel like I can't do that. So I don't braid and band, and I've never done that for any of my any of my lock journeys, but I probably would be served in doing that. But it's just something in my mind where I'm like, I don't feel like the soap can completely get in, and then even if it does get in, I don't feel like it can completely get out with those large braids on my head. So I don't like doing it. So, but anyway, no braiding and banding. With the addition of conditioner, I had many repairs that needed to be done after every wash day, and I did in fact do those. I took my time and just did them. So for those of you who are familiar with content that is produced in the lock community, I did not take special training with Melissa Blake, but Melissa Blake is the one who introduced knotted locks as an alternative to retightening. So instead of maintaining your roots via interlocking, you could technically tie a knot at the root and just do that maybe 4 times a year or so. I didn't take the training with her, but I did try to go ahead and do knots on just one row in the front and just kind of monitor it and see how it went. For me, it didn't work. I did that earlier in my process, so maybe 3 or 4 months in to the lock journey, and now at a year, I can still see the knots where I tied them in that one row. They didn't blend in for me like it blends in for everyone else, and so I didn't revisit trying knotted locks as a maintenance option for my Microlocs. I decided instead to return back to interlocking. So challenges that I faced, I kind of touched on this before. I have a hair type that likes to fight against whatever style I'm putting it in as far as braids and twists are concerned. Even with interlocking, my hair, its curl pattern will just pull it out of whatever style I'm putting it in. And so what that means for me practically is that my hair is always quite prone to bunching. I just get bunching, and so that's something that I always have to battle. I also decided that this time I wanted to try to help fortify my hair against unraveling. So if you're familiar with Microlink hair extensions, it's a hair extension service where you add hair in but you add it at the root and you connect it to the existing hair strands with a micro link bead. While I did not add any hair in, I used the micro link beads to at the bottom of my locks to serve as a little clamp and to stop them from unraveling. The microlink beads did help my hair to not unravel, which made wash day nice, but it did not protect me from bunching. Also, something to bear in mind is that over time, these black little microlink beads will discolor and it'll look like little gold things in your hair, which some people might like, some people might not like. It's just something to bear in mind. But that was something that I used to help with the unraveling, and I hoped it would help with the bunching. It didn't help with the bunching, but it did stop my hair from unraveling. Another thing that I want to talk about is with retightening. So I am somewhere in between every 8 to 10 weeks, and I do my own self-maintenance, and I know for a lot of people this is the part that most people don't like. I don't mind doing my own retightenings. It gives me an opportunity to really get acquainted with my hair and to see what's going on. Most of the time you're only going to see your hair from the hair that's kind of portraiting your face. You don't really see what's happening at the back of your head. You don't see what's going on from the profile. And so when I'm doing my retightenings, that's when I have the opportunity to see what's happening. And so it's in time for inventory for me. So I don't mind it at all. But what I was going to say is I do want to encourage people. I've listened to videos where sometimes lock service providers or people who are going to locticians will say that, you know, they're really good at their job because they get that last rotation in, that last rotation. I would really recommend that you don't get the last rotation. If you can, leave 1 to 2 rotations undone at the root so as to have a little bit of slack at the root and your hair is not so tight to the scalp that it causes tenderness or, worst case scenario, in the future causes alopecia. Leave a little bit of slack. You don't need to get every last rotation in for your locks to stay shapely and healthy. It's not necessary, and your scalp will probably thank you for that. I have made some adjustments in the way that I do my retightenings. I spritz my roots with water now to soften them, to make the hair strands a little bit more malleable. I do try to leave 1, if not 2 rotations undone at the roots so that it feels loose and it's not too tight. And I've also tried to break my habit of popping hairs. Sometimes when you have 2 locks that are connected and they're just connected by like 1 or 2 strands, it's faster and easier to just pop them. But I do instead try to use scissors because when you pop them, you're pulling at the root, and then that's what causes a lot of tenderness at the scalp when the retightening is done. So to help to help me with that sensitivity, I just take some little cuticle scissors and I just snip the hairs if necessary. I would say my overall satisfaction with my locks is good. I will say the reason I started them with braids is because I wasn't sure that I was going to have locks and I wanted the option to be able to take them down. But I knew no matter what, I was going to have to do something because while I love my afro hair, because I think I look so cute in an afro, but it's a little bit too much exposure to mechanical damage for me. That detangling, even finger detangling, you're pulling your hair, that's tension. Hair strands can pop and break, and I just didn't want to be doing that to my hair. So for me, the decision came down to I was either going to join these other women online that I see that maintain their hair for months on end in single strand braids, not single strand braids, but it's like box braids but without added hair. They just do it with their own hair, and they'll keep those in for about 8 to 10 weeks, take them down, wash them, put them back in again. I was either going to do that or I was going to start locks. I did try the braids and it just didn't look really nice on me. Like, I just didn't like the way that I looked, and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be keeping my hair like this for years on end. I'm going to have to do something else. And so I put the braids in knowing that I was doing a micro-lock establishment at the roots, and just giving myself the option. If I'm not ready, I can take them down, but I did decide to just leave them in, and I'm glad I did because I feel like my hair has an opportunity to really rest. I'm not doing a lot of pulling, tugging, detangling. I'm not doing styling. Every now and then I may do an updo, but for the most part, my hair has the freedom to just hang and be down. Get more wash days are not wash days. They take me 20 minutes, if that. And I'm just happy with it. There's a kind of freedom and even a beauty that comes with locks that I don't know. I think I really am a lock lover. Long before I had locks, I always really admired locks in other people. But once I saw the first woman that I ever saw with sister locks, I was like, I have to have it. I have to have it. It was beautiful. No heat, no chemical damage, no mechanical damage, no pulling, no tugging, very low maintenance. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have it. So I'm happy to be back locked. Um, Hopefully there won't be any major big chops. I did a video not that long ago talking about unexpected challenges in the road doesn't have to mean that it's time to cut your hair. So I hope that I take that knowledge with me in this lock journey, and that I'll be able to kind of roll with the punches. Should things come up, pray to the Lord, ask Him to help me to navigate that. Speaking of praying to the Lord, another thing, some advice that I have for newbies is, if now that I'm on my third set of locks and the set that I have right now is what I was aiming for all 3 times, if I could give advice to myself or to other people who are looking to have locks established and you want microlocks, just save up the money and pay for someone to do it. As much as I am an avid DIYer, my DIY approach has taught me much. I have learned so much from experimenting on my own hair. However, the cost I paid for that is, had I paid someone to just do my hair for me, I would have been 10 years in to a sister lock journey by now, as opposed to 1 year in to my micro lock journey because I finally did it right. My first set, I was aiming for a sister lock look. I undershot severely. To me, those parts looked really small, but by the time I was finished, they weren't small enough. And I didn't start with braids or 2-strand twists. I started with interlocks, and there was no way I was taking those interlocks down. So I just rolled with it and went with it, and it produced a very beautiful set, but it wasn't what I was going for. The second time around, I was like, this time I'm for certain going to get the sister lock look I want. And then that time I overshot and ended up with 722 locks. I remember the maintenance for that was awful. I hated doing my hair because the retightenings just took entirely too long. And because of that, I ended up combining, and then I ended up right back at that 250 mark that I had started with. I think actually I combined from 720 to 560, and then with the 560, my grid was all out of whack. And then some of the locks were like different sizes because of the way I had combined. So I just combined again. And then I was right back down to the 250 mark like I started with my first set. This time around, I was prayerful the entire time. I asked the Lord, please guide my hands. By this time, I had also done sister locks training. So I had gone through their training. I didn't use the sister locks grid, but I had a better understanding of how to get the right sizes. And in addition to that training, I was praying, asking God, guide my hands, help me to do this right. And He did. I was hoping to be right around the 400 mark. And by the time I did the final count, I think I had like 412 locks, which is perfect for me. Why is 400 important? Well, if you want the micro lock look, you do need your locks to be a certain size. They do need to be a certain size so that you have that like very full, and especially as they grow out, kind of like that long flowing, very light look. If you make the locks larger, they will still be very full and beautiful, but they won't have that light, airy appearance. They won't have that small and skinny, slender appearance because the sizing is off. So you want to make sure that they're small enough, but then you don't want to make them so small that you have like 800 locks on your head and you hate retightening. For me, that was too much. 400 is a manageable number for retightening, and 400 is small enough that it gives me that aesthetic. It gives me the styling versatility that I want from a set of microlocks without the headache of retightening 800 locks. Does that make sense? So it's not that 400 is like a line in the sand that if you don't have 400, then you don't really have microlocks. It's just, it's it's an aesthetic. It's a look. Having a lot of locks gives a certain look that having less locks doesn't quite serve the same look. Also, when it comes to styling, it's your locks that are skinnier, because they're smaller, tend to be easier to style than locks that are a little bit thicker. So I ended up right where I was trying to be, but I could have saved myself 10 years worth of trial and error and all of that had I just paid a professional to establish them, and then maybe I took over the maintenance myself. So that would be my advice. I'm distracted because there's a bunny that's over there and he's staring at me right now. I'm trying to keep my eye on him. But anyways, as always, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.